November 2007. The quiet village of Red Marley, tucked away in Gloucestershire, England, is blanketed in autumn fog. On the edge of the village sits Red Hill Farm, a sprawling estate covering nearly 284 acres. The scene is still, eerily still. Parked in the driveway is a grey car belonging to 55-year-old Kate Prout. Her brother, Richard Wakefield, concerned after days of silence from his sister, arrives at the farmhouse. The front door is unlocked. Inside, everything is too tidy. On the kitchen table lie Kate's car keys, her cell phone, and her wallet, cash still inside. Upstairs, her jewelry, passport, and essentials are untouched. There are no signs of a struggle, no indication she packed for a trip. Just silence. As Richard explores the eerily empty rooms, a vehicle pulls up. It's Kate's husband, Adrian Prout. Calmly, almost casually, he tells Richard he hasn't seen Kate since the evening of November 5, 5 days ago. According to Adrian, after an argument, Kate decided to take a break and left on her own. But here's what raises red flags. Adrian never contacted emergency services, never filed a missing person report. He just kept working on the farm like nothing happened. As night falls over Red Hill Farm, the first evening of what will become a years-long mystery begins. A mystery that will turn a respected businessman into the prime suspect in what may be a grave offense. On November 10, 2007, under pressure from Richard, Adrian Prout finally reports Kate's disappearance to law enforcement. What follows is one of the largest search operations in Gloucester's history. Over 60 officers are deployed, along with helicopters equipped with thermal imaging and specialized divers. Even search dogs previously used in the high-profile case of Malene McCann are brought in. Red Hill Farm, stretching across 284 acres, roughly the size of 200 football fields, is methodically combed. Search teams sweep over a 100 designated zones covering dense woods, rolling hills, and open fields. Investigators soon uncover critical facts. Kate left behind her passport, cards, and all her personal belongings. Her car was still at the house, and since November 5, her bank account had seen no activity. The cases quickly escalated from a missing person to a criminal investigation. During the search, one of the trained dogs alerts near a recently installed stone patio, signaling the possible presence of human remains. A dig is launched, but no evidence is found. On November 11, Adrian undergoes his first formal interview with police. Despite his unsettling calm and his failure to act during those first critical days, there's no direct evidence tying him to wrongdoing. In the public eye, Adrian is still the successful entrepreneur with everything to lose. But behind the scenes, detectives begin to paint a different picture. They delve into his financial records and scrutinize the couple's history. What emerges is a marriage strained to its limits, hidden debts, mutual resentment, and the possibility that deep-seated hostility may have been the spark that ignited a tragedy. With no Physical evidence, no confession, and no witnesses. Every square foot of Red Hill farm becomes a silent witness. Investigators are relentless, searching for any sign, any fragment, any clue that could break open this case of a quiet disappearance. Kate Wakefield was born in 1952 in the rural county of Gloucestershire, England, into a well-off farming family. While her brothers Richard and Ted chose to carry on the family's agricultural legacy, Kate took a different path. She dedicated her life to education, becoming a school teacher known for her integrity and strong moral compass. In the late 1990s, after the passing of her parents, Kate navigated the complex and emotional process of inheriting and dividing family assets along with managing the heavy tax burdens that came with it. By the early 2000s, at the age of 48, she took early retirement, ready to finally live life on her own terms. Kate had no children, and her closest bonds remained with her brothers. After selling her share of the family land, Kate accumulated a significant amount of wealth. Her dream was simple, a peaceful life in the countryside, surrounded by flowers and animals. Friends and family described her as a tall, poised blonde with a sharp, analytical mind. She wasn't naive, far from it. She was deliberate with her decisions and cautious with her finances. With substantial capital at her disposal, Kate began searching for the perfect property where she could build her dream garden. That financial independence made her an attractive match for Adrian Prout, a man who at the time was actively seeking new business ventures and opportunities to expand. Their meeting in the early 2000s marked the beginning of what Kate believed was a promising new chapter, but it would ultimately lead her down a dark and irreversible path. Kate was looking for a partner to grow old with peacefully. Instead, she found someone whose ambitions demanded constant financial support. She genuinely believed her resources and life experience could help build a strong, stable future together. But as the years went by, her role in the relationship began to shift. She wasn't a partner. She became the investor, the unpaid manager, and the financial backbone of Adrian's ventures. Her brothers would later recall how excited Kate was about purchasing property, never realizing that both legally and financially she was stepping into a trap. Adrian had a habit of treating shared assets as his own, and Kate, unaware, was slowly surrendering control. This chapter of her life would become the foundation for a slow-building conflict, one that 7 years later would culminate in her tragic disappearance from the very estate she helped build. Adrian Prout entered Kate's life in the early 2000s. He was 8 years younger, a man with a daughter named Laura, and at the time he was living in a trailer on the Wakefield farm, helping out with daily operations. Kate's brother, Ted, would later describe Adrian as someone with a sharp business instinct and an aggressive streak when it came to getting what he wanted. The relationship moved fast. By September 2000, Kate and Adrian were legally married. Their first major investment as a couple was a house they bought together and sold 4 years later for a profit. That money, along with most of Kate's original savings was used to buy 284 acres of countryside in 2004. The price around $1.3 million. They named the property Red Hill Farm. Adrian built a business around the land, launching a pipeline installation company and converting parts of the property into commercial hunting grounds. On the surface, it looked like a success story. But behind the scenes, the balance of power was shifting. And for Kate, the dream of a peaceful life was slowly turning into something far more dangerous. The main draw at Red Hill Farm became pheasant hunting, a prestigious pastime among Britain's landowning elite. Kate quickly found herself stepping into the role of co-manager. She handled the administrative side of the business, managing bookings, coordinating guest visits, and overseeing public relations. During hunting events, she would organize meals and hospitality for high-end clients, ensuring the farm maintained its polished, upscale reputation. While Adrian focused on equipment and logistics, Kate became the backbone of the farm's presentation and operations. Red Hill Farm's popularity grew, turning it into a sought-after venue for elite gatherings. But behind that polished image, a different story was unfolding. One far less glamorous. Though the estate had been largely purchased using Kate's personal funds, Adrian gradually tightened his control over every financial decision. Slowly, but firmly, he centralized all monetary operations in his own hands. Kate's role shifted from partner to employee, an unpaid one, with no say in how her own money was being spent. The imbalance created constant strain in the relationship. What began as quiet tension escalated into open hostility and legal arguments, and those bitter conflicts would eventually build toward what happened in November 2007. By 2006, the picture-perfect life at Red Hill Farm was unraveling quickly. The breaking point came when Adrienne's 17-year-old daughter, Laura, moved in with her father and stepmother. What started as a typical generational clash soon escalated into something much more volatile. Kate, a woman who valued order and discipline, struggled to accept Laura's lifestyle and behavior. One day, Kate had prepared lunch for the entire family. But at the last minute, Laura and her boyfriend deliberately left without saying a word. The act ignited a major confrontation. Emotions flared. The argument ended with Laura leaving the farm altogether. Adrian, furious, blamed Kate. And that's when he crossed a line. During another heated fight, he shoved Kate with such force that she slammed into the side of a parked pickup truck. The impact left a visible dent in the vehicle's metal frame. Shaken and fearing for her safety, Kate packed a bag and left Red Hill Farm. She stayed with her brother Richard for several weeks, unsure if she'd ever return to the place that had once represented her dreams. Despite what looked like a fragile truce, by February 1st, 2007, things came to a breaking point. Kate, in tears, called her brother and revealed that Adrian had been taken into custody after an incident at home turned aggressive. During a heated argument, a dish was shattered. One of the fragments struck Kate in the head, causing it to bleed. The confrontation moved outside to the garden near an empty concrete pool. There. Adrian grabbed Kate by the neck and held her over the deep end of the basin, telling her flatly that he could simply let go. There were no direct witnesses, and later in court, Adrian coldly denied everything. In private conversations with her family, Kate finally began to open up about the intense financial control she was under. Despite being a co-owner of Red Hill Farm, she had no access to the income it generated. Adrian managed all the money while Kate was expected to cover her personal expenses using nothing but her modest teacher's pension. It was around this time that Kate started keeping a private journal, secretly documenting every incident, every outburst, and every moment of pressure she endured. Unable to confront her husband directly, by October 2007, there was no turning back. In a last-ditch effort to salvage their marriage, Kate booked a trip to Italy for the two of them. But on the day of departure, Adrian backed out. Kate went ahead with the vacation, joined by her sister-in-law, Linda. She left the farm in the care of Diane Bellamy, a longtime family acquaintance who helped out with the property and their dogs. When Kate returned, something felt off. She began to suspect her husband of being unfaithful. She noticed a strange closeness between Adrian and Diane. According to Diane's later testimony in court, Adrian had on several occasions tried to kiss her and acted inappropriately, though she insisted it never went beyond that. In late October, the Prouts spent an evening at a local bar with some clients. After a few drinks, Kate, visibly upset, confronted Adrian in front of everyone, accusing him of being unfaithful and criticizing his daughter's behavior. When Adrian tried to drag her outside, Kate responded with a slap right there in front of multiple witnesses. This was the moment when the divorce process officially began. Kate contacted her legal team to initiate a full appraisal of the estate. The valuation confirmed that Red Hill Farm had increased in worth, now estimated at £840,000. Adrian responded with an offer £150,000, a sum far below what Kate had invested. He was hoping to keep control of the property and the business. But on the evening of Sunday, November 4, 2007, Kate said no. She told Adrian that the only fair settlement would be £800,000, essentially the full amount she had contributed from her inheritance. She wasn't asking for more, just for what was rightfully hers. The next morning, Monday, November 5, Kate visited a vegetable market. At 3:30 p.m., she called her bank and withdrew $2,000 in cash, clearly preparing to leave the farm and begin a new chapter. She also confirmed with her attorneys that she was standing firm against Adrian's terms. Around 5:30 that afternoon, Adrian was in the guest house preparing gear for an upcoming hunt. It was then that Kate approached him, intending to have one final conversation, one that would turn out to be fatal. When search efforts faded in late November 2007, Adrian Prout slipped back into his routine. Though considered a suspect, he remained free. In December of that year, he met 41-year-old Debbie Garlick at a nightclub. Their relationship escalated quickly. Soon, Debbie moved into Red Hill Farm.
She stood by him, publicly,
declaring his innocence and claiming
police were unfairly targeting a
successful businessman. But in February
2008, investigators found Kate's personal journal in her car.
It contained private entries that shed light on her final months. Adrian was
arrested again, but once more made bail
and was released. By early 2009, law enforcement informed
him that the investigation had no active
developments. Adrian took this as a win. He convinced Debbie to move fully into
the home he once shared with Kate. But everything changed on March 10,
2009. That day, police secured approval to file charges, even without a body.
Adrian was arrested for the third time.
This time, it was formal. He was being
charged with the crime involving Kate's
disappearance. He remained out on bail pending trial. In June 2009, Adrian
and Debbie announced their engagement.
Debbie was already expecting. On January 7, 2010, their daughter Evie was born. Adrian made every effort to shape his public image, portraying
himself as a devoted father, loving and
attentive. Media outlets ran photos of him holding his newborn, presenting the picture of a man wrongfully accused. Just 2 weeks before the trial, Adrian leaned hard into this image. He hoped
that showing himself as a caring father
would influence the jury.
Debbie, deeply convinced of his innocence, had no idea she was being used as part of a calculated
performance. While attorneys on both sides prepared their cases, Adrian
continued running his hunting business,
carefully maintaining the appearance of normally. But what he didn't know was
that the investigation hadn't stopped.
Quietly, methodically, over the course
of 2 years, authorities had pieced
together a case built on solid evidence. And soon, the illusion of the perfect
family man would be shattered.
January 21, 2010. Adrian Prout stood before the Crown Court. The case immediately made legal history, a charge for a deadly crime without any physical remains ever being found. Prout insisted on his innocence. Sitting in the courtroom was Debbie Garlick, holding their 2-week-old daughter, Evie, in her arms.
The prosecution built its case
entirely on circumstantial evidence. One
of the most critical moments came from
the testimony of Diane Bellamy. She denied having a romantic relationship with Adrian, but described his repeated
uncomfortable attempts to get close to
her.
She also recalled a chilling
comment he made after Kate disappeared.
That Kate had been taken far away and
that Diane shouldn't ask questions. Equally powerful were the entries from Kate's private diary along with the results of a full financial audit. Investigators made one thing clear. Kate had absolutely no reason to walk away
from her life, her home, and her assets.
For Adrian, however, her disappearance solved everything. It was the only way to avoid dividing Red Hill Farm and paying the $800,000 Kate was demanding
as her rightful investment.
Prosecutors emphasized another key detail. After Kate vanished, Adrian never once called hospitals, friends, or relatives. Behavior that didn't match that of a worried husband searching for his wife.
In February 2010, the jury reached its
decision. Guilty. Adrian Prout was sentenced to life in prison with a minimum term of 18 years. With the
conviction, he also lost any claim to
Kate's estate, effectively canceling her will. But the story didn't end there. Debbie Garlick and Adrian's daughter, Laura, launched a public campaign calling
for his release.
They were convinced the
court had made a mistake.
They believed Kate was still alive, hiding somewhere.
To punish Adrian,
public opinion split sharply.
Many felt a conviction without physical
remains was too harsh, unaware that Adrian himself would soon destroy the narrative of his innocence. The Gloucester case became a textbook example of how financial motive and a suspect's behavior after a crime can be enough to secure a conviction even when no direct physical evidence exists.
In 2011, with Adrian already a year into
his life sentence, Debbie Garlick still believed he was innocent. Driven by emotion and loyalty, she made the decision to arrange an independent lie detector examination to cover the high cost of the specialists. Debbie used
money she had inherited from her father.
She convinced Adrian to take the test, certain that a clean result would become undeniable proof, strong enough to reopen the case and secure his immediate release. Adrian, confident in his ability to control situations and manipulate perception, agreed without hesitation
to conduct the evaluation. The country's
leading polygraph expert, Don Cargill, traveled to Gar's prison in Lanarkshire. Before the test began, the specialist carefully explained how the equipment tracked even the slightest changes in heart rate, breathing, and perspiration. According to Cargill's observations, Adrian appeared unusually calm during preparation, openly expressing confidence that he would pass. But the data told a different story. When answering the key questions, his body showed intense physiological stress. The polygraph revealed clear signs of deception, especially when Adrian denied being responsible for the crime involving Kate. The strongest spikes appeared precisely when he claimed he had not physically ended her life. Don Cargill later called Debbie with the results. It shattered her. For several days, she said nothing. Then she went to the prison to confront Adrian face to face. In the visiting room, through tears, Debbie demanded the truth, looking directly into his eyes. Cornered by the evidence and realizing the lie had collapsed, Adrian finally admitted what he had done. For the first time, he confirmed that Kate's life had been taken. Debbie immediately cut off all support, and in an act of courage, she contacted detectives and shared the confession, bringing an end to years of deception. To understand what truly happened on the evening of November 5, 2007, investigators reconstructed the final confrontation. Around 5:30 p.m., Adrian was in a maintenance area of the guest house. Kate walked in to confront him one last time about the property settlement. She delivered an ultimatum. If Adrian refused to pay the £800,000 she demanded, she would sabotage the next day's hunt, humiliating him in front of his high-profile clients and exposing his debts. According to Adrian's later admission, rage took over. He wrapped both hands around Kate's neck and applied pressure.
For several minutes until she stopped
breathing. After confirming she was
gone, he left her there, returned to the
main house, and poured himself a glass of whiskey. Afterward, Prout wrapped the body in a curtain and heavy-duty plastic, carefully placing the bundle in the back of his SUV.
Once night fell, he drove to
a nearby pub and spent about an hour there chatting with patrons. It was a calculated move. He wanted to be seen, to establish an alibi. After making sure he'd been noticed, he left the bar and returned to the estate.
Deep within the wooded grounds, he had already chosen a remote spot, far from trails, isolated in the thick forest. With a shovel, Adrian dug a deep grave, placed Kate's body inside, covered it with soil, and concealed the site using
leaves and natural debris. Then he calmly returned to the house and went to sleep.
For the next 5 days, he carried on as if nothing had happened.
He didn't call Kate. He didn't contact her brothers. He believed the vast forest would hide everything. That without direct witnesses, no one could tie him to what he'd done. He was sure he could keep the farm, the business, and his freedom. What Adrian didn't count on
was the determination of Kate's brothers, or that his own arrogance
would ultimately undo him. The plan might have seemed perfect until investigators started digging into his finances and the motive became painfully clear. November 18, 2011. Just before noon, under heavy guard, Adrian Prout was transported back to Red Hill Farm. Upon arrival, authorities transferred him into an unmarked civilian vehicle to avoid media attention. They drove him deep into the woods, the same area he had once used for private hunting events. Handcuffed and surrounded by senior detectives, Adrian pointed to an unremarkable patch of land. For the forensic team, this was it. The area, roughly 250 m, was immediately cordoned off. A massive search operation began. The entire country was watching. The team brought in advanced ground penetrating radar, specially trained search dogs, and an experienced forensic archaeologist tasked with preserving every layer of disturbed soil. 5 days passed. Then, at a depth of roughly 5 ft, human remains were found. Richard and Ted Wakefield were the first to be notified quietly and under strict confidentiality. While official identification still had to be completed, detectives were clear. The location, the condition, and the surrounding evidence matched Adrian's confession. The next day, forensic analysis confirmed what the family had already feared. The remains belonged to Kate Prout. Detective Superintendent Simon Atkinson made an emergency statement to the press announcing the end of a 4-year long search. In a public interview, Richard Wakefield said that recovering his sister's body gave their family the peace they had long been denied and the ability to finally lay her to rest with dignity. Linda, Kate's sister-in-law, publicly thanked Debbie Garlick for her decision to cooperate with law enforcement. With that act, investigators finally had what they had been missing for years: undeniable physical proof of a crime that had until then rested only on Circumstantial evidence and Kate's own private writings. January 4, 2012.
After more than 4 years and 2 months of pain, the Wakefield family was finally able to lay Kate Prout to rest.
The funeral was held privately away from the public eye.
For her brothers, Richard
and Ted, it marked the moment of emotional closure, the end of a long and haunting chapter. In her final interview with the media, Debbie Garlick admitted that her view of Adrian had changed forever. She
acknowledged that he had coldly used
both her and their daughter Evie to manipulate public perception, crafting a false image of a devoted father during the investigation.
It had all been part
of a calculated performance.
Red Hill Farm, the site of the tragedy,
was put up for sale under the UK's forfeit rule, also known
as the law against unworthy heirs.
Adrian Prout was legally stripped of any claim to Kate's estate, including
the funds she had invested in the
property. Richard and Ted Wakefield handled the proceeds from the sale with care and respect. A significant portion was donated to the local hospital trust,
while the rest was distributed among
Kate's nieces and nephews. Adrian Prout
remains incarcerated in a high-security
facility.
As of 2026, he is still
serving his life sentence, the minimum term of 18 years set by the court in 2010 has not yet elapsed, and legal
experts consider his chances for early release extremely slim due to the
severity of the crime and his years of misleading investigators.
Since the case closed, the former
hunting grounds in Red Marley have remained silent. No commercial activity has taken place there again. Kate Prout's story is now permanently etched into British legal history as one of the most powerful examples of justice being achieved even without the discovery of a body at the time of conviction.
Red Hill Farm has changed hands, and
with it, the last visible traces of a man who once placed greed above human life have been erased.